This is for the know it alls who know nothing. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I call this story All the Lies Dawn Told on In Vogue and Why She's Really Broke. Finale! We did it, Joe.
We had not planned for it to be 3 years. We initially took a break because I got pregnant. And we stopped working when I was about in my 5th month. And also during that time, we were renegotiating our record deal. And that just got stretched out long, very long. It was just a lot of back and forth between the attorneys. So then it just 1 year turned into 2 years, and then I got pregnant. Dawn had a solo project deal for some time, actually. During the time that we were off renegotiating our album, she had a solo deal. And she wanted to start working on her solo deal during the time that we were going to start working as In Vogue. And she didn't want to have to make the commitment to work with In Vogue for the amount of time that we wanted to work, which was basically about a 2 year period. She felt like she didn't want to wait that long before she could put her album out.
I personally wasn't shocked because her solo project was in place before we had actually decided to come back together as a group. And so I knew she was going to have to honor that solo project deal she had made. So it was a little harder without her. And aesthetically, like Cindy said, it feels weird because we're used to like a balance with four of us. You know, we've been that way since the beginning. So
Okay, so that was Cindy and Maxine giving you the truth, albeit sugar-coated, but that's the truth. And of course, there are going to be some of Don's public defenders who will question the veracity of what Cindy and Maxine stated. So let's just take a look at the Billboard articles that give you a clear picture of what happened in 1997. First article is from the January 11th, 1997 issue of Billboard magazine. It probably, looking at Melinda Newman's kind of styling, you would think, well, maybe this is the 80s, but this is actually 1997. And I quote, Dr. Dre said he will release a solo project by Don Robinson of In Vogue on his new label, The Aftermath. Dre was in high spirits about the performance of his imprint's first album, Dr. Dre Presents. Keep in mind the dates. That is January 11th, 1997. From the April 5th, 1997 issue of Billboard magazine, there is an article from J.R. Reynolds which mentions that invokes Don Lewis. Of course, that is a copy error. I don't know why that wasn't caught in copy. They obviously mean Don Robinson, but like, I mean, who is Don Robinson? Like, he's just Don from In Vogue, right? So In Vogue's Don Lewis has signed with Dr. Dre's Aftermath label and is scheduled to release her debut solo album in the fourth quarter. Ray will contribute tracks as a producer, and Lewis says the set will present a funkier, feistier street vibe. Lewis will remain a member of In Vogue, whose electro set is slated for release June 17th. Now keep in mind the dates, okay? So this is April 5th, 1997. In Vogue's album is going to be released June 17th, 1997. Okay? Don's debut album is set for the fourth quarter. And if we know the music industry, we know that the fourth quarter is the last 3 months of the calendar year. So that will be October, November, or December. Mind you, In Vogue is releasing an album in June, in the middle of June. Okay? And finally, from the April 26th, 1997 issue of Billboard magazine, there's another article from J.R. Reynolds, and it reads Contrary to the April 5th item in this space, In Vogue's Don Robinson, who recently signed a solo deal with Dr. Dre's Aftermath, will not be staying with the Electric Act. Some of the tracks on the revamped trio's EV3, slated for release June 17th, will feature Robinson's vocals. Whatever, produced by Babyface, is the threesome's first single from the album and hits programmers' desks May 19th. So, what the timeline undoubtedly shows is that Dawn did everything that she could to create a conflict with the release of what will become In Vogue's EV3 record. From the previous three parts of this series, you get the understanding that Don had a solo deal with Elektra Records, and she took too long to complete the record. She only had 3 songs. Then it was time for En Vogue to get back into the studio. So they get back into the studio in 1996. Don't Let Go is released October of 1996, and it becomes just a runaway smash. Don then signs a deal with Aftermath. Dr. Dre announces it in January of 1997, and then Aftermath plans to release Don's record in the fourth quarter of 1997, which, as we know, EV3 was slated for release in June of 1997. So that gives En Vogue what? How much time to promote the En Vogue record? So that's June, July, August, September, and maybe not even October because the fourth quarter could start as early as October, right? It could be as late as December. And so if we do December, that's about what, 6 months? So that means that En Vogue can't tour. Why would Don do that? Let's let her explain. Let's let her lie.
Yes, I was ambushed. And so Sylvia's like she started out by saying, so Dawn, I was telling the girls before you walked in, that we can't have any hidden agendas for this album. And I was like, okay. And she said, because we're really putting a lot into this album and we want everybody to be on the same page. Okay. She said, but you have a solo album. I said, yes, I haven't started it yet. Yeah, but you have a solo deal. I do, but I haven't started my solo album yet. Now, this is with someone else, not with her. Because the one that I did with her, remember, she pulled that album. So I said, yeah, I do have a solo deal on the table, but I haven't started recording. I'm in the studio every day with En Vogue. We're almost done with this album. I've been at the studio every day with Cindy, Terry, and Maxine. And she kept saying, well, you have your album is your priority. I said, it's not, Sylvia. It's not. Like, we got into this whole back and forth, and I'm like, but no, I'm at the studio with the girls every day. I've recorded this whole album with them. So what are you talking about? My solo album has nothing to do with En Vogue. Well, we're putting a lot of money into this album right now, and we're going to put millions of dollars behind in a campaign behind En Vogue. And I'm like, okay. I said, so basically what you're telling me is you're all of a sudden you're getting behind us? Like, it's been 8 years that we've been signed to you, Sylvia. What are you saying? I said, I'm saying that it's been 8 years. Like, where were you last year? 6 years ago? 5 years ago? Why weren't you behind us from day one? And I'm going back and forth with her, and she's like, well, we need to know what you're doing. And I said, I don't understand. And this is when I looked at Terry, like, and I said, Terry did a solo album, Sylvia, right? And she said, yes. I said, so what's different about Terry's solo album? Because she did hers first. You asked Terry to do a solo album first, but what's different about her solo album? Why is that different? And Terry turned to me and said, it's just different, Dawn. It just is. It's just different. It's just different. Okay, wow. And Sylvia said again, so we need to know if you're going to stay in this group or not. And she was putting on her coat because she had to go back, fly back to New York that night. And I said, so if you're asking me if I'm out of the group, yeah, I'm out. She's like, well, we're going to give you, 24 hours or something like that to think about it. And I just said that I'm out. But I guess she wanted to give me time because she's like, did she just say that she's out of the group?
Notice how Don doesn't mention the release date her solo debut was scheduled for. She just totally avoids that, and she goes into, well, I've been in the studio every day. Okay, you can be in the studio every day, but as everyone knows, once an album is released, you need to promote the record. And so that was the reason for the meeting. That's why Sylvia called the meeting with Don and the other ladies of En Vogue and the attorneys, because Sylvia is besties with Jimmy Iovine, according to Don. They share a birthday, which is true. They are both born on the same day. They're Pisces. Jimmy Iovine is an executive at Interscope. Aftermath is under Interscope. So Sylvia got wind of what Don was trying to do, and she wanted all of the girls to sign a 2-year contract to promote the EB3 record because she was going to put a lot of money into the project through Elektra, of course, and they already had. Sylvia's the one who brought Don't Let Go to In Vogue. She's the one who brought Andrea Martin and Ivan Mateus to In Vogue. In Vogue was doing so well because they were now signed directly to the label. So Don acting confused is just, I don't know if you would call it casuistry or sophistry or just plain lying by omission, but she was fully aware of what changed. And so let's get into her talking about what did change as far as In Vogue's relationship with the label.
At the time, we had just found out that we were actually free and clear from Denny and Tommy's production deal. So, like I said, you got Denny and Tommy, which is Too Tough Enough Productions, Atlantic Records, and then you have In Vogue. Because we were no longer signed to Denny and Tommy. We were free and clear of that deal. And when we found that out, we were like, oh my God, we're free. And Denny and Tommy panicked because they knew that we knew. So what did they do? The woman that signed us to their production company was Tommy's sister, Tony Granberry. Tony signed us to a production deal with Denny and Tommy, but when they fired her or she quit, I couldn't remember which. Once she was gone, they forgot that we were free and clear. So there was no one there to tell them, hey, Denny and Tommy, you got to re-sign In Vogue because they're free and clear. If you guys don't sign, they're going to be out of a deal with you guys. They went to Too Tough Enough Productions, and now they have the right to go directly to Atlantic Records or any label for that matter because we were free and clear. However, at this point, now that we find out that we're free and clear from the label, Terry's in the studio recording. She didn't want to come out of the studio. So she stayed in the studio, finished Southern Gal, what became Southern Gal. And now we're sitting on the sidelines, like trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do. Sylvia Rohn she put her first single out. She gave her tour support. Maxine, Cindy, and I went to Terry's first show at the Pantages. We supported her. And then this is 7 months later, the record company came to me and said, hey, Dawn, do you want to do a solo album as well? In hindsight, I see that they were trying to completely annihilate Cindy and Maxine. Keep them broke, keep them hungry. Cindy's okay. Maxine is really the only one. Keep her wondering what's going on and confused and scared. And so that when we're ready, we're going to snatch Dawn's album.
So that rant was just a very circuitous way of Don admitting without admitting that In Vogue did renegotiate its contract. The ladies were no longer signed to the production deal with Foster and McElroy. It lapsed. The ladies signed directly with Elektra Records. And so when Don asked, well, what's different? That's the main difference. Foster McElroy didn't want In Vogue working with other producers. Sylvia did. Denzel Foster talked about that during the Hockey Divas era. Sylvia wanted the ladies to work with Jimmy and Terry. She wanted them to work with Teddy Riley. And so once Sylvia is their executive without a middleman, you see them working with Babyface. You see them working with Diane Warren and David Foster, and of course, Andrea Martin, Ivan Mateus, and Organized Noise. So that is the main difference. They're no longer signed through a production deal, they're signed directly to the label, and Sylvia has more discretion. And regarding Maxine and Cindy being quote unquote annihilated, that's ridiculous. Well, y'all know that Cindy was pregnant. We saw the beautiful vibe spread. We know of her marriage to Glenn Braggs. Maxine, interestingly, gave birth in January of 1996. You can look at the article from Newsmax, which is right in front of you. And so that means that if we're using conventional wisdom, she was pregnant for most of 1995. Terry's album is released November 1995. John's record was supposed to be released in the first quarter of 1996. So during that time, Maxine would have been pregnant, very pregnant in November, and first quarter of 1996, she's giving birth and she's on maternity leave. So Terry did in no way interfered with the group because two of the members are on maternity leave, and it's not like they were going to be recording or touring anyway. So, they did Batman Forever, which the production dates for that movie are December 1994 through January 1995. In Vogue had a cameo. We don't know what day they were there, but that's the last time we really saw them as a foursome. Of course, Maxine, Terry, and Don sang Freedom for the Panther soundtrack. That's at the beginning of 1995. So if the group is renegotiating and getting ready to get back together, all that is going to be put on hold if you have another member who's becoming pregnant. And so the two members who are not on maternity leave, they're about to not be working again for another year. They In Vogue pretty much did not work in 1994. So then in 1995, when they're ready to start working again, you have a member who becomes pregnant. That means they're not going to be working for another year and probably a year and a half. So neither of them are wrong to take the solo deal at all. I think Don is just using that as a point of contention to try to make Terry look like some kind of opportunistic villain, but they all had bills to pay. Don and Terry were single. Cindy was married and had a child. Maxine wants everybody to know that she was not married, but she had a child. Terry and Don had every right to take solo deals because it's not fair for them to not work for 2.5 years. The other two members are on leave, but Don wants to villainize Terry and make it seem like she did something so, you know, um, I guess unscrupulous. But interestingly, Maxine sang backup on I Don't Mind on Terry's solo record. So as you can kind of see, Don is just lying and lying and lying, leaving out key details.
We had recorded Don't Let Go, and the producer of Don't Let Go came to me and said, Dawn, I have to tell you the truth. This is what's happening. Sylvia does not want you in the group anymore. She doesn't want you to sing lead on this song. She really doesn't want you to sing on this song at all. Ivan he was hearing certain things about what I was doing and why, and he was like, I don't care what you guys think Dawn is doing. She's the best one on the song. Vocally, she can sing lead on this thing, and I'm not willing to pull her off. And he was like, so Dawn, I'm telling you what they're trying to do, but when the girls get in the studio today, because I couldn't breathe when he told me that. You mean to tell me that you're informing me right now that that they want me out of the group, that Sylvia Rome wants to kick me out of In Vogue? Are you telling me that right now?
Behind every messy queen is an even messier queen, a messy Ivan Mateus digging up dirt, fanning flames. As an aside, I truly do not understand why In Vogue never worked with its label mate Missy Elliott, particularly when Don left the group. I think instead of the ladies re-recording her vocals and expending all that time and trying to salvage the songs, what they really should have done was just focus on the last two songs they had left and let those songs be the first singles and make sure those two songs were hit songs, meaning they should have paid what they had to pay. And really, Sylvia should have, done something to kind of compensate them for her error in allowing Don to give up her solo rights. And they should have worked with Missy. They should have worked with Dallas Austin, maybe somebody European, the Berman brothers, or, you know, Max Martin, maybe even Frank Farian to get a dance tune. And I just really hear In Vogue on Sock It To Me. I know the song is, nasty, and that's when Brad and Missy were acting like they were still into men. But just imagine if they or on a song similar to that, maybe not that particular song, and they had the Brat to the left of them and Missy to the right of them and Little Kim, and you saw them having fun and just being in a state of reverence and celebration. That really could have stopped the narrative of, oh, you're down a member, you're down a member, you're down a member, them re-recording those vocals, paying all that money to re-record vocals, and then having the two songs that they had left to record be the throwaway songs on the album. That just kind of played into like a psychological tactic, and I felt like that kind of made them more vulnerable. And I really wish they would have worked with Missy or someone else besides Ivan Mateus, because he's the one who gave them "Does Anybody Hear Me?" And of course, nobody wanted to hear that because it wasn't really produced. But back to Don. Don has a lot in common with pecan pie. So we're supposed to believe Cindy, Terry, and Maxine wanted her out of the group in the fall of 1996, yet allowed her to sing lead on the comeback single and recorded songs that prominently featured all four members just so they could kick her out in March of 1997, just a couple of weeks before the release of their first single, and a few more weeks from the release of what will become EV3, so that they could have to re-record parts, which cost money and time and resources when they should have been focusing on recording two more hit singles. They did all of that for what? What is true is that Dawn used Don't Let Go as leverage to sign a solo deal. And she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to sign the solo deal while In Vogue was about to release a record. She could have waited. The album most likely would have been successful, and she could have still signed a solo deal after EV3, yet she decided to sign one while, Don't Let Go was rising up the charts. Dr. Dre does have a connection with Set It Off. I believe he was in that movie. It's been years since I've seen it. And so they wanted her out of the group so bad that they asked her to stay for 2 years and to sign a contract that she would stay for 2 years. What kind of Jedi mind trick is that? Instead of just being a woman and saying, I did not want to promote the album for 2 years, I wanted to focus on my record. I didn't want to give EV3 more than 8 months of my time, or even more than 6 months of my time. I wanted to start working on a solo project. She blames everybody else and creates all of these strange scenarios. So those are all the lies she told on In Vogue, but let's get to why she's really broke. Have you noticed that Don never talks about how much she was paid to sign with Aftermath? All we know is that after the deal went left, she still hadn't paid off her home and she eventually lost it. So was it really worth it? For her to be so eager to sign a deal where she wasn't financially set, particularly after lambasting Cindy for not wanting to risk being sued to sign a deal with LaFace, she, meaning Don, just illustrates her lack of business savvy. As friend to the series Tony Lowe noted, there must have been some revenue or some stream of income that was available for Dawn to have the managers that she did. She always mentions Cassandra Mills and Trudy Green, and Trudy Green was with her in March of 1997 when she attempted to go into In Vogue's photo shoot for the EV3 album cover after she left the group. And we know it's March because of the photos that were published in ID magazine. So a lot happened in March. In Vogue performed at the Soul Train Awards on March 7th, and then all of a sudden, Dawn is out of the group. Yes, she has managers and a potential for income, but it just doesn't come to fruition. And why she's really broke is because she just cannot get along with anyone. She doesn't work well with others. In the July 18th, 1998 issue of Billboard magazine, Dawn is talking about releasing her solo record through her own label, and I quote, Dawn's doings. Dawn Robinson, the ex En Vogue member, has recorded a cover of Aretha Franklin's Rocksteady for the Dr. Dolittle soundtrack. Robinson plans to release a new album on her own label, Left Side Entertainment, which will be her first solo set since leaving En Vogue. Robin says that although the label has not yet been picked up by a distributor, they are looking at all options. We have some distribution offers, but we won't take just anything. And then she goes on to mention Dr. Dre and says, I had signed with Dr. Dre because he came to me. His MO was that he doesn't sign any artist that was established already. He wanted to shape my career, but he didn't realize that I had a mind of my own. And I don't think anyone, doubts that she has a mind of her own. I just think the question is how exactly does it work? So she is she's quoted as saying it was a situation where he just sat there. That situation wasn't going anywhere, and creatively, we didn't see eye to eye. So she couldn't get along with Sylvia Rome. She couldn't get along with Vogue. She couldn't get along with Dr. Dre, who I won't say he's a musical genius, but he is a music industry titan, and she is not an established artist. Like I said earlier, who is Don Robinson? You haven't done anything as Don Robinson now. Don from In Vogue, okay, but you're not in Vogue. So you have to pay your dues, and it just seems like she couldn't do that and she couldn't get along with Dr. Dre. And then we fast forward nearly 6 months to January 16th, 1999, another Billboard article by Melinda Newman. Melinda Newman still has the same, oh, kind of Aquanet thing going on. Don is still looking for distribution. Ex and Vogue member Don Robinson is looking for distribution for Left Side Entertainment, the new label she started. Serving as an outlet for her own music, the label will also be home to a number of artists she signed, including female rapper Kelly and male solo rapper Twist. And I guess, that's not Twista, so I guess without the two snaps, Twist just disappeared. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what happened to Kelly. Oh, I do know they were signed to Don's label. Dawn couldn't get her own career popping. How's she gonna get someone else's career popping? The article goes on to read Robinson is working on her album with a number of producers, including Alan and Kenny Anthony, better known as R&B Act Christian. And she said this record will have some of the same feel that In Vogue had as far as the class we had, but it will be a little bit more street. Do we notice that Dawn is always trying to emphasize how street she is? But whatever. She wanted to be Sylvia Rone. She wanted to be Dr. Dre. She wanted to be a mogul. She wanted to be a big baller, shot caller. But she didn't have the savvy. She didn't have the smart. She didn't have the drive. She didn't have the hustle. She couldn't get along with people. She signed with Q Records, which was under QVC. Yes, she never made it onto QVC. She could have been selling her CD and toasters. How do you leave a group in 1997 to go solo? Your album doesn't come out until 2002, and all you do in between is join another group and don't make no money and slither up and down a pole in a hip hop video. It's the hubris. It's the hubris. She is her own worst enemy. And that's why she's broke. There's nothing scarier than being haunted by the truth when all it wants to do is set you free. And with that, I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed.